The morning mist hung low over Kensington Palace as Catherine stood by the window of their private quarters, watching the gardeners tend to the roses she had planted years ago. Her fingers traced the cool glass while William moved quietly behind her, packing the last of his belongings into a leather suitcase. The silence between them spoke volumes about the weight of what was coming. William paused, holding a framed photograph of their wedding day. Catherine's radiant smile seemed to mock the somber atmosphere that now filled their room. He remembered how confident they had been that day, believing their love could weather any storm the crown might bring. Yet here they were, facing a separation that neither had imagined possible. "The children don't understand why Daddy has to go away," Catherine whispered, her voice barely audible above the ticking of the antique clock on the mantelpiece. She turned to face him, and William saw the tears she had been fighting to hold back all morning. Dark circles under her eyes revealed the sleepless nights she had endured since learning of his deployment. William set down the photograph and crossed the room to her. His hands found her shoulders and he pulled her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her perfume. "I know this is hard, Kate. God knows I don't want to leave you and the children. But duty calls, and as future king I must serve when my country needs me." The overseas humanitarian mission had come as a surprise to everyone. William's military background and experience with emergency services made him the ideal candidate to lead the relief efforts in a war-torn region where British aid was desperately needed. The assignment would last 6 months with limited communication due to security concerns. Catherine pulled back to look into his eyes, searching for any sign that he might change his mind. "I know you have to go. I've always known that our life would be different, that sacrifices would be required. But this feels different somehow. More final." William's jaw tightened as he struggled with his own emotions. "It's not final, darling. I'll come back to you. I promise you that. No matter what happens out there, no matter how dangerous it gets, I will come home to you and our children." The sound of small feet running down the hallway interrupted their moment. George burst through the door, followed closely by Charlotte and Louis, all 3 children still in their pajamas. They had been unusually clingy since learning their father would be leaving, sensing the gravity of the situation despite their young ages. "Daddy, are you really going away today?" George asked, his voice small and uncertain. At his age, he was beginning to understand the responsibilities that came with being born into the royal family. But the concept of duty versus family remained confusing. William knelt down to his children's level, gathering them all in his arms. "Yes, I have to go help some people who are in trouble far away. But I'll write to you every chance I get, and before you know it, I'll be back home for Christmas." Charlotte buried her face in her father's neck, her small arms wrapping tightly around him. "Can't someone else go instead? We need you here too." The innocence of her question hit William like a physical blow. He looked over their heads at Catherine, who had turned back to the window to compose herself. This was the hardest part of royal duty, the moments when personal desires clashed with public responsibility. "Sometimes, sweetheart, we have to do things we don't want to do because it's the right thing to do. When I come back, I'll have stories to tell you about all the people we helped. And you'll understand why Daddy had to go," Louis, too young to fully comprehend what was happening, simply reached for his father's face with chubby fingers, babbling happily. William closed his eyes, memorizing the feeling of his youngest son's touch, knowing it would be months before he felt it again. A gentle knock at the door signaled that their time was nearly up. William's security detail was ready, and the car that would take him to the airport was waiting. Catherine turned from the window, her royal composure firmly in place despite the tears that continued to fall silently down her cheeks. "We should say goodbye to the family," she said quietly, referring to the other members of the royal household who had gathered to see William off. King Charles and Queen Camilla were waiting in the drawing room, along with William's brother Harry, who had flown in specifically for this farewell. William stood, lifting Louis into his arms while George and Charlotte clung to his legs. "Come on then, let's go see everyone before Daddy has to leave." As they walked through the corridors of Kensington Palace, Catherine noticed how different everything looked through the lens of impending separation. The portraits of William's ancestors seemed to watch them with understanding eyes, as if they too had faced similar moments of duty requiring personal sacrifice. The drawing room was filled with a subdued energy when they entered. King Charles stood by the fireplace, his expression grave but proud. Queen Camilla sat on the edge of a chair, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Harry approached immediately, embracing his brother in a hug that lasted longer than usual. "Take care of yourself out there," Harry whispered. "And don't try to be a hero. Just do your job and come home safely." William nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. The brothers had been through their share of difficulties over the years, but moments like these reminded them of the unbreakable bond they shared. Family meant everything, especially when facing the unknown. The car ride to the airport felt both endless and far too short. Catherine sat beside William in the back seat, their hands intertwined, neither speaking as they watched the familiar streets of London pass by through tinted windows. The security convoy moved through the city with practiced efficiency, but Catherine wished the journey could last forever. William's thumb traced circles on the back of her hand, a habit he had developed during their courtship years ago. It was a simple gesture that had always calmed her nerves, but today it only served as a reminder of how much she would miss these small intimacies during his absence. "Remember when we used to drive this route to visit your grandmother?" Catherine finally broke the silence, referring to the late Queen Elizabeth, whom they had visited regularly at Buckingham Palace. The children always got so excited to see her, especially during tea time. William smiled at the memory. She always saved extra biscuits for them, even though she pretended to be stern about their table manners. "I think she secretly enjoyed the chaos they brought to those formal rooms. She would have been proud of what you're doing now," Catherine continued, her voice steady despite the tears threatening to return. She understood duty better than anyone. "She would have told you that this sacrifice, this separation, is what makes a true king." The weight of his future crown seemed heavier today than ever before. William had always known he would one day be king, but moments like these made the reality of that responsibility feel overwhelming. Every decision he made, every mission he accepted affected not just him but his entire family. As they approached Heathrow Airport, Catherine could see the military transport plane waiting on the tarmac. It looked imposing and cold, nothing like the comfortable private jets they usually used for official travel. This was different. This was about service, sacrifice, and putting the needs of others before personal comfort. The car pulled into a private area, away from public view. A small group of military officials waited nearby, along with representatives from the humanitarian organizations William would be working with overseas. Catherine recognized some faces from previous royal engagements, people who had dedicated their lives to helping others in crisis situations. Before getting out of the car, William turned to face Catherine completely. He cupped her face in his hands, studying every detail as if trying to memorize her features. Her green eyes, usually so bright and full of life, now reflected the same pain he was feeling. "I need you to be strong while I'm gone," he said softly. "Not just for the children, but for the country. People will be watching to see how we handle this separation. They need to see that royal duty isn't just about privilege, it's about service, even when it hurts." Catherine nodded, understanding the full weight of what he was asking. "I'll manage the children's schedules, continue with my charitable work, and maintain public appearances. But William, you must promise me something in return. Anything. Promise me you'll be careful. Promise me you won't take unnecessary risks just to prove a point. Our children need their father to come home, and I need my husband back." William leaned forward and kissed her gently, pouring all his love and promises into that single moment. When they broke apart, both knew it would be their last private moment together for months. The car door opened, and the reality of the situation crashed over them like a wave. William stepped out first, immediately surrounded by security personnel and military officials who began briefing him on final details. Catherine followed, her royal training taking over as she smiled politely at the assembled group despite her breaking heart. The next few minutes passed in a blur of handshakes, final instructions, and formal pleasantries. Catherine watched as William transformed from her husband into the Duke of Cambridge, the future king, the man who would lead this humanitarian mission with dignity and purpose. A young military aide approached William with a clipboard of documents requiring final signatures. As he reviewed the papers, Catherine noticed how his hands shook slightly, a sign of nerves that only she would recognize. To everyone else, he appeared calm and in control, but she knew him well enough to see the anxiety beneath the surface. "Your Royal Highness," the mission commander addressed William, "we need to begin boarding procedures. The flight plan requires departure within the next 20 minutes to maintain our scheduled arrival time." Catherine's heart pounded as she realized their goodbye was truly happening now. No more delays, no more precious moments stolen together. William handed back the signed documents and turned to her, his expression a mixture of determination and regret. "Walk with me to the plane?" he asked, extending his arm. Together they crossed the tarmac toward the waiting aircraft. The autumn wind whipped around them, and Catherine pulled her coat tighter, suddenly feeling cold despite the mild weather. Each step brought them closer to the moment she had been dreading since learning of his assignment. At the base of the aircraft stairs, William stopped and turned to face her one final time. The military personnel and security team stepped back respectfully, giving them a moment of privacy while remaining alert to their surroundings. "This isn't goodbye," William said firmly, his voice carrying the authority of his royal training. "This is see you later. I will come back to you, Catherine." "That's not just a promise, it's a vow." Catherine reached into her purse and pulled out a small wrapped package. "For when you miss home," she said, pressing it into his hands. "Don't open it until you're on the plane." William pocketed the gift and pulled her into his arms one last time. They held each other tightly, ignoring the cameras they knew were probably capturing this moment from a distance. This embrace would have to sustain them both through the long months ahead. When they finally pulled apart, Catherine managed a brave smile. "Go help those people who need you. Show them the kind of man I fell in love with all those years ago. Just remember to come home to us." William nodded, unable to trust his voice. He kissed her forehead gently, then turned and walked up the aircraft stairs without looking back. Catherine watched until he disappeared inside the plane, her heart breaking a little more with each step he took away from her. The aircraft engines roared to life as Catherine stood on the tarmac, watching the plane that carried her husband slowly taxi toward the runway. Security personnel gently suggested she return to the car, but she remained frozen in place, unwilling to leave until the plane had completely disappeared from view. Inside the aircraft, William found his seat and carefully unwrapped Catherine's gift. Inside the small package was a photograph of their family from their recent summer holiday at Balmoral, along with a handwritten note in Catherine's elegant script. "Until we're together again, remember that you carry our love with you wherever you go. The children drew pictures for you. They're in your suitcase. All our love always. C, G, C, and L." William pressed the photograph to his chest, closing his eyes as the plane lifted off from British soil. Through the small window, he could see London growing smaller below, and somewhere down there, his family was beginning to learn how to live without him for the next 6 months. Back at Kensington Palace, Catherine faced the enormous task of explaining Daddy's absence to 3 young children who couldn't fully understand why their father had to leave them. George, being the eldest, asked the most difficult questions, while Charlotte expressed her feelings through tears and tantrums. Little Louis simply wandered the palace looking for his father, calling Dada in rooms where William's presence still lingered. The first week proved to be the hardest. Catherine maintained her public schedule, attending charity events and royal engagements with her characteristic grace. But those closest to her could see the toll the separation was taking. Her smile seemed forced during photographs, and she often appeared lost in thought during conversations. Maria, their trusted nanny, noticed how Catherine would pause outside William's study each morning, as if expecting to find him there reading his morning briefings. The room remained exactly as he had left it, his reading glasses on the desk, a half-finished cup of tea growing cold on the windowsill, and his favorite fountain pen lying beside an unfinished letter. "Mummy, when is Daddy coming home?" Charlotte asked during breakfast one morning, her lower lip trembling as she pushed her porridge around her bowl. "I had a bad dream, and Daddy always makes the scary things go away." Catherine set down her own untouched breakfast and pulled Charlotte onto her lap. "Daddy is helping people who are scared too, darling. He's making their bad dreams go away, just like he does for you. And every night when you go to sleep, Daddy is thinking about you and sending you love even though he's far away." George, mature beyond his years, tried to be strong for his mother and siblings. He had overheard staff members discussing the dangerous nature of his father's mission, and the weight of that knowledge sat heavily on his young shoulders. At school, his teachers noticed he had become quieter, more serious, as if he was trying to fill the role his father had temporarily vacated. The palace staff, who had watched William grow from a young prince into a devoted father and husband, did their best to support the family during this difficult time. They organized special activities for the children, maintained familiar routines, and provided Catherine with the space she needed to process her emotions privately. 2 weeks after William's departure, Catherine received the first official communication from his mission. The letter, heavily censored for security reasons, contained only basic information about his safe arrival and the beginning of his humanitarian work. Between the formal language and blacked-out sections, Catherine searched desperately for any personal touch that might indicate how he was truly coping with their separation. The public remained largely unaware of the family's personal struggles. Official statements spoke of the Duke's important humanitarian work and the Duchess's continued commitment to her royal duties. But those who worked closely with the royal family could see the strain of separation affecting everyone in the household. Catherine's mother, Carol Middleton, became a frequent visitor to Kensington Palace, offering practical support and emotional comfort to her daughter. During one particularly difficult evening, she found Catherine in the nursery, holding one of William's sweaters and breathing in his fading scent. "I keep thinking I hear his footsteps in the hallway," Catherine confessed to her mother, "or I'll see something funny that I want to share with him, and then I remember he's not here. It's like learning to live with a piece of myself missing." Carol embraced her daughter, remembering her own experiences of separation when Catherine's father had traveled extensively for business. "The heart doesn't understand geography, darling. Love doesn't diminish with distance. William carries you with him just as surely as you carry him in your heart." The children's bedtime routine became particularly challenging without William's presence. He had always been actively involved in bath time, story reading, and the final goodnight kisses. Catherine found herself overwhelmed trying to manage all 3 children's needs, while dealing with her own grief over his absence. One evening, as Catherine tucked Charlotte into bed, her daughter asked, "Mummy, do you think Daddy misses us as much as we miss him?" Catherine smoothed Charlotte's hair away from her face, choosing her words carefully. "I think Daddy misses us so much that his heart hurts just like ours does. But he knows that we love him and he loves us, and that love is like an invisible string that connects our hearts no matter how far apart we are." Charlotte seemed satisfied with this explanation and drifted off to sleep, clutching a photograph of her father. Catherine remained in the darkened nursery for several minutes, watching her daughter sleep and wondering how many more nights like this lay ahead. The palace gardens, once a source of joy and peace for Catherine, now served as a place of reflection and sometimes sorrow. She would walk the same paths she had strolled with William, remembering conversations they had shared and plans they had made. The rose garden she had planted seemed to mock her with its continued blooming, beautiful and vibrant despite the emptiness she felt inside. Staff members often found Catherine in William's favorite spot by the pond, where he would sit with the children to feed the ducks. She would bring her correspondence there, trying to feel closer to him, while handling the endless stream of royal duties that continued regardless of her personal situation. As the 3rd week of separation began, Catherine realized she was slowly learning to function in this new reality. The sharp, constant pain of missing William was gradually settling into a dull ache that she carried with her throughout each day. She was discovering strength she didn't know she possessed, but she wondered how much longer she could maintain this brave facade before the cracks began to show. A month into William's deployment, Catherine woke one morning to find George standing by her bedroom window, still in his pajamas, staring out at the garden where his father used to jog each morning. The sight of her eldest son's small figure, silhouetted against the dawn light, broke something inside her that she had been carefully holding together. "Sweetheart, what are you doing up so early?" Catherine asked gently, wrapping her dressing gown around herself as she approached him. "I thought I might see Daddy running," George replied without turning around. "Sometimes I pretend he's just really early and I missed him." "But he's not coming back from his run, is he, Mummy?" Catherine knelt beside her son, pulling him close. At 8 years old, George was beginning to understand the weight of royal duty in ways that childhood shouldn't have to bear. "No, darling. Daddy won't be coming back from his morning run for a while yet, but he is thinking about us every morning when he wakes up, just like we think about him." The breakfast table felt enormous, with William's empty chair serving as a constant reminder of his absence. Catherine had considered rearranging the seating, but the children insisted on keeping Daddy's place set, as if he might walk through the door at any moment. Charlotte had taken to leaving small drawings beside his plate each morning, colorful, pictures of their family with messages like "Miss you, Daddy," written in her careful handwriting. During this challenging time, Catherine found unexpected comfort in her royal duties. The structured schedule of engagements provided a framework for her days, and the opportunity to focus on helping others gave her a sense of purpose beyond her personal sadness. Her work with children's charities became particularly meaningful, as she channeled her own experiences as a mother into her advocacy. At a children's hospital visit that week, Catherine met a young girl named Emma, who was waiting for her father to return from military deployment overseas. The 7-year-old's situation struck Catherine deeply, and she spent extra time talking with Emma about missing someone you love. "My daddy sends me letters," Emma confided, showing Catherine a worn envelope she carried everywhere. "He says that when you really love someone, they're never really gone because they live in your heart." Catherine smiled through tears she hadn't expected. "That's very wise. Your daddy sounds like a special man just like mine." The conversation with Emma reminded Catherine that she and her children were not alone in their experience of separation. Across the country and around the world, families were enduring similar challenges, often with far fewer resources and support systems than the royal family enjoyed. That evening, Catherine decided to do something she had never done before. She sat down with her laptop and began writing a personal blog post about the experience of separation, carefully crafting her words to respect both her family's privacy and her public position. She wrote about the strength she had discovered in her children, the importance of maintaining routines during difficult times, and the power of love to transcend physical distance. The post, when published on the official royal website, resonated with thousands of people who were facing their own family separations. Comments poured in from military spouses, divorced parents, and anyone who had ever had to say goodbye to someone they loved. Catherine realized that by sharing her vulnerability, she had connected with people in a more meaningful way than any formal royal engagement could achieve. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, William was discovering his own challenges in adapting to life without his family. The humanitarian mission was demanding and dangerous, requiring his complete focus during the day, but evenings brought overwhelming loneliness. He slept with Catherine's photograph beside his narrow camp bed, and read the children's letters so many times that the paper was beginning to wear thin. The work itself was deeply meaningful but heartbreaking. William found himself in refugee camps, disaster zones, and areas of conflict where families had been torn apart by circumstances far beyond their control. He met children who hadn't seen their parents in years, mothers searching for missing sons, and fathers who had lost everything trying to keep their families safe. One particularly difficult day, William encountered a young boy about George's age who had been separated from his family during an evacuation. The child's eyes held a pain that reminded William of how much he missed his own children, and he spent hours helping to locate the boy's relatives while fighting back his own tears. In a brief satellite phone call to Catherine that week, William's voice carried a weariness she had never heard before. "I'm doing important work here, Kate, but God, I miss you all so much it physically hurts. I dream about tucking the children into bed, about holding you. Sometimes I wake up and forget where I am for a moment." Catherine closed her eyes, gripping the phone tighter. "We miss you too, more than words can say. But William, what you're doing matters. The families you're helping, they need you, and we're managing here. We're sad, but we're strong. Are the children angry with me for leaving? No, darling. They're proud of you. George told his teacher that his daddy is a hero helping people far away. Charlotte drew a picture of you with wings like an angel. They understand in their own way that sometimes daddies have to do difficult things because it's right." After the call ended, both William and Catherine sat in their respective locations, he in a basic military facility, she in their luxurious palace bedroom, feeling simultaneously connected and utterly alone. The conversation had provided comfort, but also highlighted the vast distance between them. Back at Kensington Palace, Catherine was learning to navigate bedtime routines, homework help, and playground disputes without William's support. She discovered Reserves of patience she didn't know she possessed, and found creative ways to include William in the children's daily lives, despite his absence. She started a family video diary, recording the children's daily activities, funny moments, and special achievements to share with William when communication allowed. The children enjoyed performing for the camera, knowing their daddy would eventually see their latest dance moves, silly jokes, and artwork. One evening, while reviewing footage of Louis taking his first tentative steps, Catherine realized that William was missing these precious milestones. Their youngest son was growing and changing every day, and there was no way to recapture these fleeting moments. The thought filled her with a profound sadness that she carefully hid from the children. The palace staff, observing Catherine's struggle, quietly rallied around the family. The head chef began preparing William's favorite meals on difficult days, hoping to bring small comforts to Catherine and the children. The groundskeepers maintained William's garden exactly as he had left it, ensuring it would be perfect for his return. As the 5th week of separation began, Catherine stood once again at her bedroom window, watching the sunrise paint the garden in golden hues. She no longer looked for William's running figure among the trees, but she whispered a quiet good morning to him, wherever he might be, trusting that somehow, across all those miles, her love would reach him. 2 months into William's deployment, unexpected news arrived that would test Catherine's strength in ways she had never imagined. She was in the middle of reviewing plans for an upcoming charity gala, when her private secretary approached with an expression that immediately made her heart race. "Your Royal Highness, we've received word from the Foreign Office. There's been an incident at Prince William's location. He's safe, but there was an attack on the humanitarian convoy he was traveling with." Catherine's hands began to shake as she set down the papers she had been holding. What kind of incident? How safe is safe? I need to know everything right now. The details that followed painted a terrifying picture. William's convoy had been targeted by hostile forces while delivering aid to a remote village. Several vehicles had been damaged, and while William was unharmed, 2 aid workers had been seriously injured. The mission was now under complete communication blackout for security reasons, meaning Catherine wouldn't be able to speak to her husband for an unknown period. That evening, Catherine faced the impossible task of explaining the situation to her children without terrifying them. George, with his growing understanding of world events, immediately sensed that something serious had happened when his mother gathered them all in the sitting room before bedtime. "Children, I need to tell you something about Daddy's work," Catherine began, choosing her words carefully. "He's still safe and helping people, but his job has become a bit more dangerous. That means we might not be able to talk to him for a little while, but it doesn't mean anything bad has happened to him." Charlotte's eyes filled with tears immediately. "Is Daddy going to be hurt like the people in the movies?" "No, sweetheart. Daddy is very well protected and he has lots of people taking care of him. But we need to be extra brave while we wait to hear from him again. Louis, too young to understand the gravity of the situation, continued playing with his toys on the carpet, blissfully unaware that his father might be in danger. Catherine envied her youngest son's innocence while simultaneously feeling grateful that at least one of her children wouldn't lie awake worrying. The next few days passed in an excruciating blur of waiting. Catherine maintained her public schedule, but those who knew her well could see the strain in her eyes and the tension in her shoulders. She jumped every time her phone rang, hoping for news from the Foreign Office, and found herself unable to sleep for more than a few hours at a time. King Charles visited Kensington Palace during this period, finding Catherine in William's study, where she had taken to working, surrounded by the familiar scent of his cologne and the comfort of his personal belongings. The king, who had faced his own share of family crises over the years, understood the particular agony of waiting for news about a loved one in danger. "He's strong, Catherine," the king said gently, settling into the chair across from William's desk. "He has excellent training and the best protection available. More importantly, he has every reason in the world to come home safely. I keep thinking about all the things I should have said before he left," Catherine confided, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if our last conversation wasn't enough? What if he doesn't know how much we love him? My dear, if there's one thing William has never doubted, it's your love for him and his children's love for him. That knowledge will be his strength during whatever challenges he's facing right now." The palace staff, aware of the crisis, went to extraordinary lengths to maintain normalcy for the children while supporting Catherine through this terrifying period. The head gardener taught George how to tend to his father's prized roses, giving the boy a sense of purpose and connection to William. The chef involved Charlotte in preparing her father's favorite biscuits, which they packaged carefully to send when communication resumed. On the fourth day of silence, Catherine was attending a previously scheduled engagement at a women's shelter when her private secretary approached with urgent news. Her heart stopped, fearing the worst, but the message brought relief that nearly knocked her to her knees. "Your Royal Highness, we've received confirmation that Prince William is safe and well. The communication blackout has been lifted, and he'll be able to speak with you this evening." Catherine excused herself from the engagement and rushed back to Kensington Palace, her hands shaking as she called the children's school to have them brought home early. She wanted the entire family together when they finally heard William's voice again. That evening's phone call was unlike any conversation Catherine had ever experienced. William's voice carried exhaustion and stress, but hearing him speak her name brought tears of relief she hadn't realized she was holding back. "Kate, I'm so sorry you had to worry. I couldn't contact you, and all I could think about was how frightened you must be." "We're just so grateful you're safe," Catherine replied, her voice thick with emotion. "The children have been asking about you constantly. They need to hear your voice." Each child spoke to their father, their relief evident in their animated chatter about school, friends, and the small events that had filled their days. William listened to every word as if it were precious music, storing up these moments of normalcy to sustain him through whatever challenges lay ahead. After the children had said goodnight, Catherine and William had a few private moments to talk. "How bad was it, really?" Catherine asked, needing to understand what he had faced. "Bad enough that I realized how much I have to lose," William admitted. "In that moment when things went wrong, all I could think about was getting home to you and the children. This mission is important, Kate, but you are everything to me." "How much longer?" Catherine asked the question that had been haunting her for days. 4 more months if everything goes according to plan. "But Catherine, I need you to know that if anything like this happens again, I'll be coming home immediately. No mission is worth leaving our children without their father or you without your husband." The conversation ended with renewed promises of love and commitment, but also with the sobering reality that William's work remained dangerous. Catherine went to bed that night grateful for his safety, but acutely aware that this period of separation was testing their family in ways they had never anticipated. The next morning brought a return to routine, but with a new understanding of how precious and fragile their normal life truly was. Catherine found herself looking at her children with fresh eyes, seeing not just their immediate needs but the resilience and strength they had developed during this challenging time. She realized that while this separation was breaking her heart, it was also revealing the unshakable foundation of love that held their family together. No distance, no danger, no amount of time could diminish what they meant to each other. That knowledge would have to be enough to sustain them through the months still ahead. Christmas was approaching, and the reality that William would not be home for the holidays cast a shadow over what had always been the royal family's most cherished time together. Catherine stood in the palace's grand dining room, watching staff members hang familiar decorations that seemed hollow without William's presence to complete their family circle. The children had been looking forward to their father's return for Christmas since the day he left, counting down weeks and then days on a calendar in the nursery. When Catherine finally had to explain that Daddy wouldn't make it home in time, the devastation on their faces nearly broke her resolve to remain strong. "But you said Daddy would be home for Christmas," Charlotte protested, her voice rising with the kind of righteous indignation only a 5-year-old could muster. "You promised." Catherine knelt down to her daughter's level, fighting back her own tears. "I said I hoped Daddy would be home for Christmas, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups hope for things very much, but that doesn't always make them happen. Daddy is still helping people who need him, and that work is taking longer than we all hoped it would." George, trying to be mature beyond his years, asked quietly, "Will Daddy be sad that he's missing Christmas with us?" "Very sad," Catherine admitted honestly. "But he'll also be proud that we're being brave and still celebrating together, even though we miss him." In the weeks leading up to Christmas, Catherine threw herself into creating magical moments for her children, determined that their holiday memories wouldn't be overshadowed entirely by their father's absence. She organized special trips to see Christmas lights, arranged for extended family visits, and even convinced Santa to make an early video call appearance to reassure the children that their presents would still arrive on schedule. The palace staff, recognizing the family's need for extra support during this emotional time, went above and beyond in their efforts to create holiday magic. The head chef prepared all of William's favorite Christmas treats, setting aside portions to photograph and send to him. The housekeeping staff decorated his study with special care, ensuring that when he finally returned, the room would reflect the Christmas he had missed. On Christmas Eve, a surprise package arrived from William's location, carefully wrapped gifts that he had managed to arrange through military channels, along with a recorded video message for each family member. Catherine watched her children's faces light up as they saw their father on screen, and for a moment the distance between them seemed to disappear. "Hello, my darling children." William's voice filled the sitting room. "I wish more than anything that I could be there to tuck you into bed on Christmas Eve and wake up with you tomorrow morning. But I want you to know that every single moment today, I'll be thinking about you opening your presents and playing with your new toys." He had recorded separate messages for each child, referencing their specific interests and recent achievements, proving that despite the distance he remained intimately involved in their daily lives. For Catherine, he had included a private message that she watched alone after the children had gone to bed. "My beautiful wife." William's tired but loving face filled the screen. "I know this Christmas isn't what any of us wanted, but watching you hold our family together from thousands of miles away makes me fall in love with you all over again. You are the strongest person I know, and our children are lucky to have you as their mother." Christmas morning arrived with the usual chaos of excited children, but an underlying sadness permeated the festivities. The children opened their father's gifts with delight, but Catherine noticed how they kept looking toward the door, as if William might still walk through at any moment. King Charles and Queen Camilla joined them for Christmas lunch, along with other family members who rallied around Catherine and the children. The conversation was deliberately cheerful, focusing on the children's excitement about their new toys and plans for the new year, but William's empty chair at the head of the table spoke volumes about what was missing. During the traditional Christmas afternoon walk on the palace grounds, Catherine found herself falling behind the group, overwhelmed by memories of previous Christmases when William had led the children in snowball fights and helped them build elaborate snow forts. This year she watched from a distance as King Charles took on those roles, grateful for his efforts but aching for the man who should have been there. That evening, after the children had finally fallen asleep surrounded by new toys and wrapping paper, Catherine sat alone in the sitting room, staring at the Christmas tree. Her phone rang and William's name appeared on the screen, their traditional Christmas night call that had been planned for weeks. "How was today?" William asked immediately, his voice revealing his own emotional exhaustion. "Beautiful and heartbreaking," Catherine answered honestly. "The children were wonderful and everyone tried so hard to make it special, but we all felt your absence. Louis kept asking where Daddy was and George tried so hard to be the man of the house that it nearly broke my heart. I'm so sorry, Kate. I'm so sorry I'm not there. I'm sorry you had to handle Christmas alone. Sorry the children had to wonder where their father was. Sorry that I'm missing these precious moments that we can never get back." Catherine could hear the tears in his voice and her own began to fall freely. "Don't apologize for doing something honorable and important. The children understand in their own way that their daddy is helping people who have nothing. That's a lesson worth learning, even if it hurts." "How much longer can we do this?" William asked, voicing the question they had both been thinking but hadn't dared to speak aloud. "As long as we have to," Catherine replied with more certainty than she felt. "We're stronger than we knew, William, all of us. But we're also learning that strong doesn't mean it doesn't hurt." After ending the call, Catherine walked through the quiet palace, checking on her sleeping children and turning off Christmas lights. In the nursery, she found Louis had fallen asleep clutching the toy soldier William had sent him, while Charlotte had carefully placed her new doll next to the framed photograph of her father on her bedside table. George's room was dark, but Catherine could see he was still awake, staring at the ceiling. She sat on the edge of his bed and he immediately curled up next to her. "Mummy, I've been thinking," George said quietly. "Maybe this Christmas was sad because Daddy wasn't here, but maybe it was also special because we got to show Daddy how much we love him even when he's far away." Catherine hugged her eldest son tightly, amazed by his wisdom and resilience. You're absolutely right, sweetheart. Sometimes the most important way to show love is by being brave when it's hard. As she tucked George back under his covers, Catherine realized that while this Christmas hadn't been the one they had planned, it had revealed something important about their family. They were bound together by something stronger than physical presence, something that could withstand separation, danger, and disappointment. That knowledge would have to sustain them through whatever challenges the new year might bring. The next morning brought news that would change everything. Catherine woke to find her private secretary waiting outside her bedroom door, with an urgent message that would either bring the answer to her prayers or shatter her world completely. The message that Catherine's private secretary delivered on Boxing Day morning changed everything in an instant. The humanitarian mission had been deemed complete ahead of schedule due to improved security conditions in the region. William would be coming home within the week. Catherine sank into the nearest chair, her legs suddenly unable to support her as months of carefully controlled emotions threatened to overwhelm her completely. Are you certain? There's no chance this could change again? The Foreign Office has confirmed, Your Royal Highness. Prince William's transport has already been arranged. He should arrive at RAF Northolt on January 2nd. Catherine covered her face with her hands, allowing herself a moment of pure, unguarded relief before she had to compose herself and tell the children. The weight she had been carrying for over 4 months, the constant worry, the loneliness, the responsibility of holding their family together, suddenly felt lighter than it had since the day William left. She found the children in the playroom, still surrounded by Christmas toys but playing half-heartedly, their earlier excitement dimmed by the reality that the holidays couldn't fill the void their father's absence had created. When Catherine entered the room with tears streaming down her face, George immediately stood up in alarm. Mommy, what's wrong? Is Daddy hurt? No, sweetheart, Catherine managed through her tears. Nothing's wrong. Everything's wonderful. Daddy is coming home. He'll be here next week. The explosion of joy that followed was unlike anything Catherine had ever witnessed. Charlotte screamed with delight and began jumping up and down. Louis clapped his hands without fully understanding what was happening, but feeding off his siblings' excitement. And George, her serious, responsible little boy, burst into tears of relief that he had been holding back for months. Really, truly? Charlotte demanded, grabbing her mother's hands. Not just maybe this time. Really, truly, Catherine confirmed, pulling all 3 children into her arms. Daddy finished his important work early, and now he's coming home to us. The next few days passed in a whirlwind of preparation and barely contained excitement. Catherine found herself cleaning rooms that were already spotless, arranging flowers that didn't need arranging, and checking William's study obsessively to ensure everything was exactly as he would want to find it. The children channeled their excitement into creating welcome home decorations. Charlotte drew picture after picture of their family reunited, while George helped the palace staff plan a special welcome home dinner, featuring all of William's favorite foods. Louis, understanding only that Daddy was coming back, toddled around the palace saying "Dada home" to anyone who would listen. Catherine's own emotions swung wildly between joy and anxiety. After months of functioning independently, she wondered if they would easily fall back into their old rhythms. Would William be changed by his experiences? Would the children feel shy around their father after such a long absence? Would their marriage feel different after this test of separation? On the evening before William's return, Catherine stood in their bedroom, looking at the clothes she had laid out for the next day. She had chosen carefully a blue dress that William had always loved, simple jewelry and shoes comfortable, enough for running if the children broke free from their handlers at the airport. King Charles called that evening to check on the family's preparations and to express his own relief at his son's imminent return. "How are you feeling, my dear?" he asked gently. Terrified and ecstatic in equal measure, Catherine admitted. "I've dreamed of this moment every day for months, but now that it's here, I'm worried that somehow reality won't live up to what I've imagined. Love doesn't diminish with distance or time, Catherine. If anything, what you've both endured will have strengthened what you share. Trust in that." The morning of William's return dawned cold and clear. Catherine woke before her alarm, having barely slept from excitement and nerves. She checked on each child, finding them all still asleep but smiling in their dreams, as if they could sense that their father was coming home. The drive to RAF Northolt felt both endless and too short. The children chattered excitedly in the back seat, their earlier shyness about seeing their father again forgotten in their anticipation. Catherine gripped her hands together in her lap, trying to calm her racing heart. At the airfield, a small group of officials and family members had gathered to welcome William home. Catherine stood with the children at the edge of the tarmac, watching the sky for the first sign of his aircraft. When the plane finally appeared as a small dot on the horizon, Charlotte grabbed her mother's hand so tightly it hurt. "I can see it. I can see Daddy's plane," George shouted, pointing at the approaching aircraft. As the plane touched down and taxied toward them, Catherine felt tears beginning to fall. The long months of separation, the worry, the loneliness, the strength she had found she didn't know she possessed. All of it was about to end with the man she loved walking down those aircraft stairs. The plane stopped, and there was a moment of complete silence before the door opened. William appeared at the top of the stairs, looking tired and thinner than when he had left, but unmistakably himself. His eyes immediately found his family, and the smile that spread across his face was brilliant enough to light up the gray January morning. Charlotte broke free from Catherine's grasp first, running across the tarmac with her arms outstretched. "Daddy, Daddy!" "You came back." William dropped his bag and caught his daughter in his arms, spinning her around as she covered his face with kisses. George and Louis followed, and suddenly William was surrounded by his children, all talking at once, all desperate to touch him and confirm that he was really there. Catherine watched from a few steps away, giving them this moment of reunion while her own heart felt as if it might burst from happiness. When William finally looked up and their eyes met across the heads of their children, she saw everything she needed to know reflected in his gaze. He handed Louis to George and walked toward her, his steps slow and deliberate, as if he wanted to memorize every second of this approach. When he reached her, he cupped her face in his hands, studying her features as if seeing her for the first time. "Hello, beautiful," he said softly, his voice rough with emotion. "Welcome home," Catherine whispered back, before he kissed her with months of longing and love and gratitude that they had survived this test together. When they finally broke apart, surrounded by their laughing children and watched by tearful officials, Catherine knew that while the separation had been the most difficult thing their family had ever faced, it had also proven something important. Their love was stronger than distance, deeper than fear, and more enduring than any challenge that royal duty might demand of them. They were home, all of them, in the most important sense of the word. They were together again, and that was everything.